See everything outside?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did y'all get these when you came in?
Yes,
we
ma'am.
did. Okay. Hello?
Hi there.
Just
in the wrong door.
No, you're right. I was just about to start a tour on the house, so if you'll come get checked in, we're good timing.
Yeah, great timing. We came at the wrong time.
Oh, we're all together,
Oh, okay.
so it's not a problem.
We're going to start at the front door, ladies. Y'all want to join us now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I love how the floors sound in here.
Where's everybody from?
Iowa?
Wow, Iowa.
That's a long way. Where does it
This is just
green?
midway to where we're going.
Right away to Florida.
Gotcha.
Do you ladies mind if I record this, or shall I turn my camera off?
I don't mind.
Okay, y'all
Do
mind?
y'all mind?
Yeah, okay, cool.
Not wanted by the FBI, so.
All right, well, welcome everybody to Ivy Green. The home was given that name 200 years ago. David and Mary Keller, Helen's grandparents, came here from Virginia and purchased 640 acres. Now, we only have 10 acres left of that 640. But when they came, there was a lot of English ivy growing everywhere, and that's why they chose Ivy Green as the name for their home. Now, this was a self-sufficient plantation. Everything was made, raised, or grown right here on the property. So they would have had farm animals, barns, gardens, orchards, outbuildings. I tell the school children, in your mind, you have to erase all the houses, all the pavement, all the sidewalks. Imagine a home in the country.
Yeah.
That's what this would have looked like.
Okay.
10 acres today versus 640 acres. Now, 85% of what you're going to see is original because it stayed in the family through all the decades. So, not just furniture, but clothing. Kate Keller's knitting is still out in the little cottage, and things that belong to Helen also. The nails in the floor were handmade and put in 1820. Helen's father grew up in this house. His name was Arthur Keller. He had been a captain in the Confederate Army, so his title was Captain Keller. He was an attorney. He was also editor of the local newspaper called the North Alabamian, and of course he was a farmer, responsible for running of everything here.
Wow.
His first wife was named Sarah. They had 2 boys, James and Simpson. Sarah got sick and died after 10 years of marriage. Then he married Kate Adams from Memphis, Tennessee, and that's Helen's mother. He and Kate had 3 children. Helen was their first. Kate's family descended from 2 presidents, John Adams and John Quincy Adams. Her father was a brigadier general. She was a Memphis belle, very well read, very educated for an 1800s girl, and 20 years younger than Captain Keller. This was a lifestyle change for Kate to come to a working plantation. When they married, he wanted the little cottage right next door to be what he called a bridal suite. So when you go out there and look, you'll see where they slept, but also where Helen was born. In the little cottage, June the 27th, 1880.
That is awesome.
She was healthy and normal, everything was perfect up until 19 months, and that's when she got very sick, ran a high fever, and the high fever left her deaf and blind. More modern doctors said she probably had scarlet fever or meningitis, but they would call it brain fever in that time. Helen's family went to any doctor with Helen that they would learn about. There wasn't anything anyone could do. In the following years, Helen became more and more frustrated. Her behavior became more and more unruly. But when her sister, Mildred, was born, Helen was 6 years old, very jealous of the new baby. Walked in and found that the baby was in the doll cradle, and she flipped it over. Well, that certainly alarmed the family, and they said, we have got to find help. They took her to an eye specialist in Baltimore, Maryland, who was doing things no one else had done. He could not help, but he said, take her to see Alexander Graham Bell. The man who invented the very first telephone was a teacher of the deaf. In fact, he had married one of his students, so his wife was deaf as well as his mother. And he's from Canada. He was often in Washington, D.C., and that's where Helen met him when she was 6 years old, and they were lifelong friends. But he's the one that told the family she doesn't need a doctor, she needs a teacher. He suggested they should write a letter to Perkins School for the Blind. That school is near Boston. It's Watertown, Massachusetts. He said maybe someone from Perkins would come to your home in Tuscumbia, Alabama. So they wrote the letter. This is the teacher that came. That's Ann Sullivan. We call her Annie. She was 20 years old when she came here. She had a very sad background. Her family were poor, Irish, immigrant potato farmers. Her mother died young of tuberculosis, which was rampant. She and her little crippled brother, Jimmy, were abandoned. They were taken to a poorhouse and left. And the little brother didn't live too long. So she had a really sad background. Plus Annie was going blind. She kept eye infections all the time. She had trachoma caused by bacteria. And as you can imagine, the poorhouse was not a very sanitary place. She went to school for the first time in her life at age 14. She begged some people to let her get out. She said, I want to learn to read. By then, she qualified for Perkins, the blind school. She had lost so much of her sight. She was behind, she was out of place, but she ended up being the valedictorian of her class, so she too was smart. She graduated, thought, what will I do to make a living? The letter came from the Kellers asking for help, and she was willing to come here. They paid her $25 a month plus room and board, and that was good income.
Yeah.
When you go upstairs in a moment, you're going to look at 2 bedrooms. The boys in the family were using the bedroom that's on the top right. On the left side, there's a bedroom that Helen and Annie shared. There's a little bed that Helen slept in, a bigger bed that the teacher slept in. Helen, being the sweet little girl that she was, locked the teacher up in the bedroom. She noticed the key had been left in the door. She wasn't very happy about this person that had come into her life, and she thought, what a good trick to play. She wrote in her own book that she turned the key, pulled it out, hid it under a big piece of furniture, and went about her day. The family realized that the teacher was locked up. No one could find the key. They finally had to bring a tall ladder from the barn, put it up to the 2nd-story window, and Annie, with those long dresses they wore, had to climb out the window and come down the ladder to get out of the house.
Golly.
Don't you know she wondered what she'd gotten herself into?
Mischievous.
God help Keller. Found out what she did.
From day one, any object that Helen touched, Annie would name it in her hand using the manual alphabet. She would spell with her fingers the shapes to let her know everything has a name. Well, Helen was so smart, she started spelling everything back to the teacher. She caught on to it so quickly, but Helen was just copying. It didn't mean anything until they got to the pump that's still in the backyard. And that was only 1 month and 2 days after Annie came here. People think that took months and months, but it was really quick.
Wow.
The water was flowing over Helen's hands. Annie was spelling W-A-T-E-R over and over. And Helen later wrote that when she felt the misty, she felt the coup wet something, she had this misty memory of Walla. And that's what she had called water at 19 months. And then that made her realize all this spelling was names of things. And that she knew then she had a way to communicate.
That's really cool.
Helen ran from person to person, object to object, and learned 30 words the first afternoon. By end of summer, she knew 625 words. She learned to read Braille. She mastered Braille by age 10.
That is so cool.
They did later realize that she was genius level smart. They said someone at some point had done an IQ test and said 160. So that's very intelligent. Would y'all like to are y'all gonna all try to climb the stairs today? You wanna take a little stop and do that and then come back down? I think it's a lot to listen to when you have to stand here so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna take some pictures over here.
Well,
so if y'all
we'll
wanna-
cover downstairs if y'all wanna go up, and then we'll just swap out if that's cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, give everybody some room. Thank you.
Stairs are a little bit steep, y'all hold the rail.
I love how they have the memorabilia from like the movie poster and. There's a Helen Keller quarter above the door. She was a big part of Alabama's history.
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to sign the guest book. Right, for now.
I just love to hear your signature.
Yeah. We'll cut the